is a Meccan surah by consensus of the Mufassirin. In other words, all agree that it was revealed prior to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam making hijrah to Medina. And about this surah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, as is reported by Tirmidhi and Ahmad, that anyone who wants to visualize Qiyamah, anyone who wants to visualize Qiyamah as if it is right in front of him should read 3 surahs. One of them is this, إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ. The other is the surah after this, إِذَا السَّمَاءُ انْفَطَرَتْ. And the one after that, إِذَا السَّمَاءُ انشَقَّتْ. This is the sequence that they are in the Qur'an. Because these 3 surahs paint a very vivid picture of some of the things that will occur on the Day of Judgment, and they compel a person to visualize it. And visualizing those things that are in the unseen is not only beneficial, but it is extremely important. It is important for a person to occupy their mind with those things that Allah Azza wa Jal and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam have told us about, which we cannot see necessarily with our own eyes. Even in terms of perfecting our worship, in the hadith of Jibreel, when Jibreel alayhi salam asked Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, what is ihsan? What is the perfection of worship? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam replied, أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ. Worship Allah as if you can see Him. As if you can see Him. فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. And some muhaddithin have translated it like this, that because you cannot see Him, then you know and you are aware that He is seeing you. And the Sahaba radiallahu anhum were those people who could visualize the things of the ghaib as if they were right in front of them. In other words, they had such a strong connection with these matters that these images used to float around in their minds all the time. And this is a very powerful thing, to have that kind of attention towards what Allah has said, that a person's mind is occupied with it. This helps create that connection which becomes a source of salvation in dunya and akhirah. Because a person who has the images of Jannah in front of them, like Abu Rayhana radiallahu anhu, who came back from a long journey and his wife dressed up and started waiting for him. He said, let me just pray 2 rakats. And so he started praying salat and praying and praying and praying. And he continued praying those 2 rakats of salat until he heard the adhan of Fajr. And of course his wife was very upset that you tired yourself and you exhausted me as well. Don't I have any share from you? So he said, I just started reading, and then as if I was strolling through the gardens of Jannah, and I completely lost track of time. I had no idea. Similarly, in the Sahih Hadith, the 2 Sahaba that were on watch, and they said, okay, I'll stay awake for half the night, you rest, and then I'll wake you up. Now the Sahabi who was staying awake says, well, instead of just passing time, I might as well pray salat. So he starts, and the enemy sees that this soldier is just standing there, standing still. It's not moving. So he fires an arrow at him, but he doesn't move. Fires another arrow at him, still doesn't move. Fires the 3rd arrow at him. Now he finishes his salat and wakes up his companion. His companion wakes up and sees that he is wounded. He said, what happened? Why didn't you wake me up earlier? He said, well, I was reading Surah Al-Kahf. I didn't feel like breaking it. Haritha radiallahu anhu is woken up by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's sleeping in the masjid. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wakes him up and says, how are you this morning? He says, I have woken up as a true mu'min. He says, really? Well, every claim has some proof, so what's the proof of this claim? So he says, well, O Prophet of Allah, I am spending my days fasting and keeping hungry for the pleasure of Allah. I spend my nights awake worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the images of Jannah and Jahannam are in front of me all the time. I can visualize the people of Jannah visiting each other from their palaces, literally going and visiting each other. I can see it happening in front of my eyes. And I can see and hear the people of Jahannam screaming in agony. And as if the arsh of Allah is right in front of me. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told him that you have gained the recognition of Allah, hold on to it. So developing this state of consciousness, awareness, where the mind and even the senses are occupied with that which Allah has told us, this is one of the very important aspects of Iman. And then what happens is that a person starts developing a connection with Akhirah, a connection with Allah, even a connection with the Malaika, a connection with all of these things that exist. A person starts realizing how real and how powerful all of these things truly are. But if the mind is occupied with everything else, like in today's fast-paced life, or it's a life in which our attention is very, very much diverted, distracted. We are having trouble focusing on even things that are happening around us in our lives. We are very occupied with our devices. We're very occupied with our screens. And our minds are jumping from one thing to the other, to the other. One of the greatest harms of this is we start losing contact and attachment with the things that really matter. So that's why Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has given us a key to reconnecting with those things, and that is read these surahs frequently and ponder upon them. Sit in seclusion and really think about what is happening, what is being described, and imagine it happening. Play that over in your mind. Let it settle in, and it will scare you. There are some things that will frighten you and make you shiver. What was it that would make Sahaba read the same verse over and over and over again all night? Tamim Dari radiyallahu anhu, reciting one verse from Surah Jathiyah, the entire night just kept repeating it and crying. And these are not isolated incidents. You will find many stories of the Sahaba like this, and the Tabi'is, and the pious Muslims. Why? Because the reality of that ayah was playing through their minds. So the Quran demands our attention. It demands our focus. It demands that we fill our minds and our hearts with what it is saying. Sometimes we use the tilawat of Quran itself as a distraction. Or some people use it as just a background noise. You go to someone's house, Quran is playing in the background. The whole time people are talking. Another kind of gathering is the Quran is just serving as a nice, beautiful, some great qari is reciting, and it's just serving as a nice backdrop. People are sitting in the car, the Quran is playing, they're chatting away, the Quran is playing, it sounds nice. That's not what the Quran was revealed for. The Quran demands our attention. And when the Quran is recited and we are not giving it our attention, then our hearts slowly start becoming hard and resistant to the message of the Quran. So let's take a look at this beautiful surah. Look at the opening of this. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ. So the sun is something that we see every single day. And the power, the intensity, the heat and warmth, the intense light that it provides, and the source of life that the sun is. Now imagine one day the light, the rays of the light that this sun is emitting are wrapped up, they're folded up. إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ. Kawwara means to fold up, to wrap up something. So can you imagine the rays of light being folded right now? They're shining straight. Scientists will tell you about how light travels and what rays of light and the various frequencies of light look like. Imagine all of that being folded. And then the sun is going to become dim. إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ. Kawwara means to wrap up something. Like you take your imama and you wrap it around your head. So the light of the sun is going to be wrapped up and folded, and all of a sudden this sun is going to become dim. Some ahadith mention that once the sun loses its light, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to pull it out of the sky and throw it into Jahannam. And the same thing will happen with the moon. إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ وَإِذَا النُّجُومُ انْكَدَرَتْ. Nujum is plural of najm, which means star. And this can mean the stars that give off light, and it can also mean celestial bodies. But here, most likely, it is referring to those stars that give off light. And inkidar, qadar, means for something to be grayish in color, or something to be tainted in color. Something was pure white, and then kudura came into it, means it's now kind of a dirty grayish color. So again, the light, the stars have this piercing white light that pierces through the darkness. And najm al-thaqib, we'll talk about that in Surah al-Tariq, how its light pierces through the darkness. So for a star's light to dim, how is that going to happen? So some ahadith mention that the stars will be moved from their place, because on one side the earth is going to be quaking and shaking, on the other side the sky is also going to be moving. So these stars will be moved, they will be shifted and scattered. They will go scurrying. Some narrations mention that these stars are going to start dropping out of the sky. So they're no longer going to be in their fixed positions. They're going to start falling out. They're going to start becoming dim. And all of this is happening in the sky. The biggest thing that we see is the sun. All of a sudden, its light is gone. After that, the stars, and this includes the moon, because it is a secondary source of light for us, all of a sudden they become dim and they're scattered everywhere. So there's chaos in the sky. And what's happening on the earth? وَإِذَا الْجِبَالُ سُيِّرَتْ. The earth begins to shake, and it shakes in a way that it has never shook before. And the way it can be described is if I take this sheet, for example, the sheet from this table, and I whip it up and down. So how it's going to rise and fall really, really quickly, and I can keep making it ripple like that. If there is something on it, anything, you're going to see it flying off. If there were crumbs, small pebbles, dust, anything on this, and I were to take it and shake it and make it ripple, how everything would go scurrying off of it? That is how the earth is going to shake. It's going to shake so violently, and we talked about this a little bit in Surah An-Naba, that mountains, no matter how tall they are, only a small percentage of them is protruding from the earth's surface. Over 70% or 75% of the mountain is beneath the ground. So a mountain, for example, some of the tallest peaks that are several kilometers high, Some of these peaks are over 100 kilometers deep in the ground. Prime example, Mount Everest. It's high, it's the highest, the tallest peak. But how deep it is in the ground is unbelievable. So imagine what kind of earthquake is it going to take to pull these out of the ground? They're so deeply embedded in the ground. And it's going to send them not just loose, it's going to send them flying into the skies. Like that violent shaking of a carpet or of a sheet. So وَإِذَا الْجِبَالُ سُيِّرَتْ, the mountains are not just going to quake, the mountains will be sent flying. سُيِّرَتْ, they will be sent flying. So there's chaos on the earth, and it's a chaos unlike anything ever imagined by mankind. وَإِذَا الْعِشَارُ عُطِّلَتْ, Ishar is plural of ushara. And ushara refers to a camel which is in its 10th month of pregnancy. In other words, it's just about to give birth. Now when a she-camel would be in that phase, the Arabs considered that to be their most prized possession, and they would take every measure to protect it, because that was their investment and this was the time to cash in on their investment. So they would take every measure to make sure the camel is looked after, it's protected, it's fed, it's given water, it has everything that it needs. But on that day, even that 10-month pregnant she-camel will be completely uttilat, completely discarded. So atal, it means for something to be stripped of beauty, something to be stripped of care. So it will be completely neglected. What does that mean? That anything that people cared about, all of a sudden it will not be on their mind. What does the Qur'an say in another place in the 17th juz? That even the mother that has just given birth to her child, she is not going to pay any attention to her breastfeeding child. تَذْهَدُ كُلُّ مُرْضِعَةٍ عَمَّا أَرْضَعَتْ. And women, out of sheer fright, those women that are carrying babies, out of sheer fright, they will miscarry or they will give birth. Just out of fright. So all things that are cared about, that are tended to, will all of a sudden become completely irrelevant. Nobody will care about anything. Like we read in Surah Abasa, people will see their most beloved people of dunya and they will flee from them. So father is going to flee from his son is going to flee from his father, flee from mother, flee from wife, flee from friends, flee from brother. All the dear people of this dunya will all of a sudden become irrelevant. وَإِذَا الْوُحُوشُ حُشِرَتْ. The beasts, wuhush, wild animals, those animals that are usually not tamed and not kept or domesticated. So wuhush refers to all of those animals that are not domesticated. Even all the wild animals will be gathered. All the animals will be gathered. Hushirat, they will be collected, assembled. Why? Like the hadith says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise the animals on the Day of Judgment for the sake of qisas, for the sake of settling any accounts between them. If any animal unjustly hurt another animal, then that animal will have a chance to retaliate and to get its revenge, and then they will all be turned to dust. So for example, the hadith mentions that if there was a horned goat, it struck a goat that did not have horns, so they will switch places. The one who didn't have horns in dunya will be given a horn here. The one who had horns in dunya will be stripped of its horns. This one will have a chance to hit it, and then they will be turned to dust. وَإِذَا الْوُحُوشُ حُشِرَتْ. وَإِذَا الْبِحَارُ سُجِّرَتْ. The oceans will be sujjarat, ignited. And sujjarat means very fiercely ignited. So fiercely ignited gives the implication of explosions. Now, some people ask the question that, well, water puts out fire, so how can these oceans turn into fire? We've never seen an ocean burning. Khair, this statement is a very immature statement, because those people who've seen volcanic islands, they know exactly what it's like for an ocean to be literally on fire. And as some scientists explain, that look at the composition of water, it has hydrogen and oxygen. And hydrogen is being binded to the oxygen by the amr, by the command of Allah. That's the only thing keeping this hydrogen binded with this oxygen. Otherwise, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, He can separate them. And there you have hydrogen, which is one of the most explosive substances known to mankind. So these are just our limited thinkings speaking out loud. Otherwise, all of this is very simple. So imagine you have oceans filled with hydrogen and it all explodes at once. Allahu Akbar. So وَإِذَا الْبِحَارُ سُجِّرَتْ. And وَإِذَا النُّفُوسُ زُوِّجَتْ. Nufus is plural of nafs, which means soul, people. What will happen to people? Zuwijat. Zuwijat means they will be paired. Zawj means a pair. So how will people be paired? There are a few opinions on this. Some Mufassirin say, and this is the preferred position of Imam Tabari rahimahullah, that like people will be assembled together. Like the Quran says, يَوْمَ نَحْشُرَ الْمُتَّقِينَ إِلَى الرَّحْمَنِ وَفْدًا وَنَسُوقُ الْمُجْرِمِينَ إِلَى جَهَنَّمَ وِرْدًا. So the people of taqwa will be grouped together, and the people of sins will be grouped together. So people of a certain type of kufr will be grouped together. People of a specific type of shirk will be grouped together. People of a specific type of iman will be grouped together. People who had a certain good deed as their hallmark, they will be grouped together. And like this, based on deeds and beliefs, people will be grouped. So Zuwijat here is referring to people being grouped. So on the day of judgment, everyone will be called and raised with people that are like them. People will not be raised and collected on the day of judgment based on their families, based on their tribes, based on their lineage, based on their professions, based on anything else that we use as a mark of distinction. None of that is going to matter. The groupings that will take place on the day of judgment will be based on beliefs and deeds and qualities. An-nufus zuwijat. Some mufassirin, some tabi'is have said that zuwijat here, it refers to the soul and the body being reunited, paired up again. They were separated at the time of death, and now they're paired up again. So this is also one opinion regarding this verse. وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ. Maw'uda, wa'ada, it means to bury someone alive. So maw'uda is the girl that was buried alive. She will be asked. So as many of you will be familiar, the Arabs in the days of Jahiliyyah had this custom of burying their daughters alive. The reason for this was that they felt a daughter was a sign of shame. It was a sign of shame, and having a boy was a sign of honor. In fact, in one place, the Quran sort of elaborates this. وَإِذَا بُشِّرَ أَحَدُهُمْ بِالْأُنْثَى ظَلَّ وَجْهُهُ مُسْوَدًّا وَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. When the child is about to be born, the father used to go away because he would not want to see the results of this firsthand. So the news would be conveyed, the good news, you have a daughter. So what would happen? His face would become dark with anger. And he would be in a fit of rage. He would be so upset. What is this? يَتَوَارَى مِنَ الْقَوْمِ مِنْ سُوءِ مَا بُشِّرَ بِهِ. He would hide from people because this was an embarrassing piece of news. Because of the terribleness of this news, he would hide himself, and then he would be faced with this decision: أَيُمْسِكُهُ عَلَى هُونٍ أَمْ يَدُسُّهُ فِي التُّرَابِ. Should he keep this daughter and face the disgrace that comes with it, or should he just take her and push her into the dirt? سَاءَ مَا يَحْكُمُونَ. Many of them made a terrible decision at that time, and that would be to bury their daughters alive. As soon as this news would reach them, they would now think of how they can get rid of this child, even though a daughter is such a great ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And subhanallah, even in today's cultures and societies, there are people who will get the ultrasound done to find out if it's a boy or a girl, and if the prevalent, and they can't be certain at many phases of the pregnancy, but if the opinion is inclined towards it being a female, many people even today will have the child aborted just because of this. And this is why in the area that I live in Canada, it is illegal for the doctors to tell the parents the gender of the child. It's illegal. And for the technician, for the ultrasound technician, it's absolutely forbidden. If it's discovered that you told someone what the gender is, what you thought the gender was, right away you're out of a job. Even doctors are forbidden. Why? Because they discovered a trend among certain communities that if it's a girl, right away they'll go for abortion. So now, that innocent newborn, in fact, it's mentioned in some narration, some books of Tafsir, that women would be made to give birth close to a small ditch, close to a hole. So this hole would be dug in preparation, in anticipation. So if it was a girl, right away, sometimes they would bury her alive. That's it. Just put her into that pit and cover her with dirt, and that's it, and kill her just like that. So on the Day of Judgment, she will be called. The victim will be called. And this is one of the ways of tormenting the oppressor, tormenting the person who perpetrated the crime, that the victim is brought in front of them and made to tell their account of what happened. And it's so that this haunts him, so that it's repeated in front of him and in front of all of mankind, that this is what this man did to this girl. And she will be asked a simple question: that little girl, what was your crime? What was your sin because of which you were killed? بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. What did you do wrong? Did you hurt someone? Did you take something from someone? What did you do? So she will stand in front of her murderer, whether it was her father or whoever else did it, and she will say, I was killed simply because I was a girl. So this is to complete the hujjah against the killer. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will deal with him accordingly. So all of this is happening on the Day of Judgment. وَإِذَا الصُّحُفُ نُشِرَتْ. And the scrolls, we talked about the word sahifa in the last surah. Nushirat, they will be opened up. So imagine scrolls that are rolled up and now they're being unfolded. Nushirat, they're being unfolded, they're being opened up, and people are being shown their deeds. Someone is getting their book of deeds in their right hand, someone is getting it in their left hand. They don't want to receive it in their left hand, so they put their hand behind their back, and then the angels come from behind them and force it into their hands. وَأَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ وَرَاءَ ظَهْرِهِ. It's pushed into their left hand from behind their back, and فَسَوْفَ يَدْعُو ثُبُورًا. And they will scream, I am ruined, I am ruined, I am ruined. And those who get their book in their right hands, فَيَقُولُ هَاؤُمُ اقْرَءُوا كِتَابِيَهْ. Everyone come, look at my book. Just like a child who's done a really good assignment, goes home and says, look at my work. A child who has a very nice notebook comes and shows it off to his or her parents, like this person will say, everyone come and read my book. Inni dhanantu anni mulaqin hisabiya. I knew one day that I'm going to be taken to account, so I prepared for it in advance. وَإِذَا السَّمَاءُ كُشِطَتْ. Look at how this series of verses is taking you from one scene to another scene, back to the sky. What else happened? The sun lost its light. It was pulled out of the sky. The stars were pulled out of the sky. So what's left in the sky? Nothing is left in the sky. وَإِذَا السَّمَاءُ كُشِطَتْ. Now the sky is peeled away from the heavens. Kashata is what you do when those of you who slaughtered animals on Eid or so on and so forth. How do you remove the skin of a goat or a sheep? You make the incision and then you put your hand inside and then you pull it off. That pulling it off is kushitat. So the sky will be stripped away, taken away, no more sky. Where will it go? Allah knows. The Quran says, يَوْمَ تُبَدَّلُ الْأَرْضُ غَيْرَ الْأَرْضِ وَالسَّمَاوَاتِ وَبَرَزُوا لِلَّهِ الْوَاحِدِ الْقَهَّارِ. This earth is going to be completely destroyed and done away with. The sky will be destroyed and done away with, replaced with another sky, replaced with another earth. وَإِذَا السَّمَاءُ كُشِطَتْ. So, as the next surah will explain, how will that process happen? The sky is going to split open, it's going to crack, and then it's going to be a whole process that is described in the next surah, Surah Al-Infitar. وَإِذَا الْجَحِيمُ سُعِرَتْ. Meanwhile, Jahannam, the fire of Jahannam is su'irat, it is being blazed. It is being blazed, and su'irat is the process of feeding it with oxygen, pumping air into it in order to make the flames more intense. So its heat, its fire will be intensified, and Mufassirin have explained that this term, su'irat, is a little bit different from su'irat with the tashdeed. The tashdeed gives the benefit of this happening over and over and over again. And وَإِذَا الْجَنَّةُ أُزْلِفَتْ. On the other side, Jannah is being brought closer. So Jannah is literally going to be brought forth by the angels. Closer to whom? وَأُزْلِفَتِ الْجَنَّةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. For the God-fearing people, Jannah will be brought closer so they can see it, they can smell its fragrance, they can feel the breeze of Jannah and become content that this is where we are going to end up. For the other people, they are pushed towards Jahannam. They haven't entered into Jahannam yet, but it is made to blaze harder and harder so that its intensity reaches them, its smoke reaches them, its heat and its hot wind reaches them. Allahu Akbar. When all of this happens, alimat nafsum ma ahdarat, then people will realize what they have brought forward. Alimat, they will realize, they will understand that this is what I have actually done. Today, it is easy for a person to justify their actions, to find an excuse or a reason for everything that we do. And for everything that we don't do, today we can justify it. We can tell ourselves that those things that are bad are in fact good. And those things that are good and we should be doing them, they're not suitable for us. Today we can tell ourselves all of these things. But on the Day of Judgment, all of those veils of deception will be removed, even from our own minds. And we will see things as they actually are. That's what this verse is telling us. On the Day of Judgment, people will start seeing things as they actually are. Today we're seeing things through many different lenses, through the lens of being a weak human being, through the lens of our own desires, our own preferences, our own tendencies, our own biases. We're seeing things through so many different lenses, it's hard to keep up with them all. But on the Day of Judgment, all of those veils and all of those lenses will be removed, and we will start seeing things with the eye of reality. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the evil of that day and from the horrors of that day. May Allah Azza wa Jalla give us the ability to prepare before that time comes, before our death comes, and make us from those people that Jannah is brought close to them, and they're given glad tidings, and they're given their book in their right hand. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our children and our future generations, and enable us all to strive to equip ourselves and prepare ourselves for the Day of Judgment. I will keep it to this for today's lesson. Inshallah, next week we will continue this surah. And just a reminder that from next week, the dars will be after Maghrib. So please keep up with the Maghrib time, because now Asr time is going back, it's receding. It will become more difficult for brothers that are working and so forth to participate. And Maghrib time is also coming back. It becomes a more convenient time for everyone. So keep an eye out for the sunset time. We'll offer Salat al-Maghrib here, and inshallah immediately after that we'll have the dars, and that's when the live streaming will take place as well. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. And we'll have our Q&A from next week also, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.